Hello friends, this is Kauushal from Jupiter Consultants, Chandigarh. As the thumbnail suggests, this video is for LLB students, law students in India. जो students India में law जिन्होंने की हुई है, who are law graduate and if they are practicing here in India and want to move to Australia for to be able to practice legally there. So it is a very important video. It is about my conversation with the Professor Tim Connor of University of Newcastle, who is a professor of law there in the university. So please do watch this video and see how a law graduate from India can work legally and practice law in Australia. So I think this video will give you a lot of insight, and if still you have any questions, quick queries do write to us in the comment section. We'll be more than happy to assist you. And if you are interested to pursue your application, हमारी टीम से कनेक्ट करिए, हमें व्हाट्सएप करिए, कॉल करिए और ईमेल भी कर सकते हैं आप. तो आई होप यू लाइक दिस वीडियो. थैंक यू सो मच.
Okay, my name is Dr. Tim Connor, and I am deeply honoured to be chatting with Amith about the law programs on offer at the University of Newcastle Law School. Amith is very kindly going to ask questions as I go, if anything I say is not clear, which is, of course, quite possible, and also it will make it more interesting if we can interact as we go. I will share, and it's very good to be with you, Amith.
And let me introduce Professor Tim Connor. I am meeting him for second time. First, I met him during my visit to University of Newcastle Law School. So very honored, esteemed professor from Law School of University of Newcastle. Thank you so much, Professor, for taking out time from a busy schedule. And yes, it is. I'm hoping that it's an interesting conversation, especially because there are not many videos or conversation available for the law programs in Australia, to be precise. So here we will talk about the opportunities for the law graduates who are already law graduates here in India, how they can come study and work in Australia. And again, and more importantly, there are many students who who are focused that they want to study law in Australia after their class 12th. So what are the opportunities for students who are about to take undergraduate degrees, and for those who have already got the law graduate degrees? So tell us all about this, how University of Newcastle is very well placed, what are the offerings, and what are the opportunities? It's all yours, Professor.
Thanks so much, Amith. And I'll share my screen, if I may, because I think that will assist to explain our programs. So the first program I would like to discuss is the premium offering, I guess. It's our Juris Doctor graduate diploma in legal practice. So it's 2 degrees combined. The Juris Doctor covers all of the academic requirements to be qualified to practice as a lawyer in Australia. And the graduate diploma in legal practice covers all the practical training, including the supervised experience where you have to do a certain number of hours supervised by an Australian lawyer before you can qualify to practice law in Australia. So this Juris Doctor graduate diploma in legal practice covers all of the training requirements, both practical and academic, to become a lawyer in Australia or qualified to practice law in Australia. It's usually a 3-year program of 280 units. Most of our courses are 10-unit courses, so that means that there are 28 courses that need to be completed in 3 years. However, if you've already qualified to practice law in India, you'll receive 80 unit or up to 80 units of credit. So if you commence with our mid-year intake, which is in July, you'll be able to complete the whole program in 2.5 years rather than in 3 years. So July is recommended because if you commence in February, it will actually take 3 years, even though you have the 80 units of credit. And the reason
Okay.
for that is that our graduate diploma in legal practice is a 2-year sequential program. So over the course of the program, students are expected to do more technical, practical work in our supervised law firm, our own law firm that we run at the university, and then as an external placement. And we've designed that program in a way that just commences at the beginning of each calendar year. And we can't really have students commence that program until they have some knowledge of Australian law. So that's why if you start in the middle of the year, you can get 6 months of Australian law studying with us, and then you can complete the whole program in 2.5 years, commencing the graduate diploma in legal practice at the beginning of the year. Sorry, I
Wonderful.
jumped too fast ahead. Did you have questions at this stage, Amit?
Is it the graduate diploma and the Juris Doctor? Is it combined, or first student will finish the Juris Doctor, then will go for the graduate diploma?
So our premium offering, the two are combined, so that it's integrated. So for the last 2 years of the program, the students are doing the graduate diploma as they do the Juris Doctor, which means that as they study, they get to practically apply what they study at the same time. And I'll talk a bit about that practical work in a couple of slides, but it is quite in-depth practical training, much more than any other law school in Australia provides. And that's our key point of difference, I guess, from other law schools in Australia.
Okay, so you're taking any law graduate from Indian university to be able to qualify for this program?
Yeah, so the entry requirements for the English language requirement, it's an IELTS of 7 or a comparable requirement for another English proficiency test.
Yeah.
So it's IELTS 7 overall and 6.5 for any of the subtests. So it is quite a tough IELTS requirement. Although often students from India and other South Asian countries it's less of a problem for them than for other parts of the world, but it is quite a tough IELTS requirement. The tuition fees, the other requirement is a grade point average of 4 out of 7 or above, according to the University of Newcastle's grade point average system. But that's quite a moderate or reasonable expectation. So if a student has passed all their courses in their previous degree, it's almost guaranteed that they will satisfy that expectation. Although if they want to get first I'll talk about tuition fees and then I'll talk about the scholarships we offer. So
yeah, I was about to come to scholarships.
Yeah, so the tuition fee, if you're a lawyer from India and you receive 80 units of credit, then that will leave just 200 units to complete. And based on 2024 fees, that would be 90,000 Australian dollars across the full program. So the main cost in terms of the university, at least, will be the tuition fees. But if you compare those tuition fees with other Australian universities, particularly Australian universities in the main cities like Sydney and Melbourne and so on, we've worked really hard to keep those tuition fees as modest as possible. There is a small student facilities fee of 351 Australian dollars a year, and students are required to have adequate health insurance, and there's a link there to information about that. I can share these slides with you after the presentation. But if the students have an average grade of around 65, 68% in their previous law degree in India, then they will almost certainly be eligible for our South Asia Excellence Scholarship. And that scholarship is 1,250 Australian dollars per 10 units. So across the whole program, that will come to 25,000 Australian dollars. So that will reduce the 90,000 by 25,000. So we're looking at sort of 65,700.
Which is very reasonable, very reasonable.
Yeah,
Yes.
so it really makes it much more attractive if the students qualify for that scholarship. The other thing that is important to know is that because this is a postgraduate program of more than 2 years in duration, and because Newcastle is
Regional area.
a regional area, students will be eligible, certainly under current government rules, will be eligible for up to 4 years of post-study work rights, with the potential for an application for an extension on that. So it creates an opportunity to not only get the degree here, but have the capacity to stay and practice for up to 4 years, while potentially for some lawyers will be interested in going back to India. Others will be interested in trying to apply for immigration, and that gives a significant amount of time to establish a relationship with the sponsor and so on.
Absolutely.
So that's the Juris Doctor Graduate Diploma in Legal Practice. We have only just in the last month or so also decided to offer the Juris Doctor as a standalone program. So that is for students who would like to get the academic training with us, but to get the practical training somewhere else. So that will reduce the number of units you need to complete with us to 120 units. It'll be possible to complete those 120 units in 2 years. So the fees will reduce further. But in order to qualify to practice in Australia, if you go down the path of just having the Juris Doctor, then you'll need to do a practical legal training program with another provider. Now, actually finding another provider to do a practical legal training program is not that difficult. So there are a number of other providers that offer the practical legal training program just 3 months full-time or 6 months part-time. So that part can be completed quite easily. And the fees are, I think, I haven't checked lately, but they're, in the order of 12 to 15,000 Australian dollars. But the problem is those other providers don't guarantee to arrange the practical training that you need to qualify to practice law in Australia. Now, for some candidates, that won't be a problem. If you've got connections in Australia that work in law firms and you're confident that they'll be able to help you arrange your supervision that's required to qualify, that case you're fine. Like you don't need to do our Juris Doctor Graduate Diploma in Legal Practice. You could just do our Juris Doctor or a Juris Doctor at another university, do the Diploma in Legal Practice with another provider, and then with your contacts in Australia arrange supervision. However, if you're not confident of getting an Australian law firm to supervise you, then our JD GDLP is really attractive because we guarantee, we're the only university in Australia or only education provider in Australia that guarantees to arrange all the supervised experience that you need.
That makes
and that is our big point of difference, because I'll go through the details a bit later, but in the second last year, students spend 105 hours of supervised work experience in our own law firm. So we have solicitors in our law school who they teach some of the courses and they supervise students working directly with clients in our legal centre. It operates as a kind of community legal centre because we don't want to steal work from law firms in Newcastle, because we have a very good relationship with them, and they then supervise our students in their final year. So we have 105 hours in our own law firm in the second last year, and in the last year 180 hours in an external law firm either in Newcastle or Sydney. And we have a dedicated placement officer who does everything she can to place students in placements that match their career goals. So if you want to work in corporate law, she'll work really hard to match you in a corporate law firm, family law in a family law firm, government law, a government lawyer in a government department, and so on. So it's a really top shelf offering because it's really tailored to students' needs, and particularly for international students who are not 100% confident of being able to arrange that supervision themselves.
Yeah, that's what I was about to come. That for students coming from India who do not have any connections, I would recommend they should go for the combined degree. To be able to get the practical experience which is provided by the university. And Professor, you were telling when we were there that you have your own, the university has own law firm. You
Yep.
you yourself, do the cases and everything. And in practical training, students represent the clients, in the actual court.
Yeah, that's right. So, for example, my colleague Daniel Mattis is a very experienced criminal lawyer. The Newcastle District Court is just 5 minutes walk away from our law school. When he's supervising students who take our criminal law practical option, the students interview the clients when they first arrive. If our university law firm, it's called the University of Newcastle Legal Centre, if we decide to take the case, then Daniel will be the lawyer taking the case, but the students will do a lot of the work. So the students will do the initial interview with the client. They'll take the information to Daniel. Daniel would, if our law firm decides to take the client's case, the student will work with Daniel to prepare the briefs to go to court. The students will go with Daniel to the court. He'll be the person defending the client, but students will get to work on the briefs. They'll get to talk through with the client and with Daniel afterwards what the result of the trial was and so on. So it's a very practical program within our own law firm. And because students get that experience with us, then it's very easy for us to find placements with external law firms, because the external law firms know that our students come to them with experience, knowing how to do legal writing, knowing how to maintain legal records and legal files. And so our students are in demand for that work. And the other thing to be aware of is that certainly at the moment in Newcastle, and I imagine for the coming years, there's a lot of demand for paralegal staff in law firms in Newcastle and Sydney. So a lot of our international Juris Doctor students work part-time as paralegals in Australian law firms while they study with us. And that both that and the external placement program helps them to establish really good networks and really good relationships with the legal fraternity in Newcastle. And many of them actually end up working with the external firm that they do their placement with. But even if that firm doesn't have capacity to take them on, they'll have a reference from us, from our own lawyers, but also a reference from, provided they work hard and are industrious and so on, a reference from that Australian law firm, which makes it much easier for them to then take advantage of the post-study work rights and work for that, at least the initial 4 years, and potentially longer if they manage to finalize the immigration requirements.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
So I might move on to this. I'll share these slides with Amith to pass on to anyone who's interested. But if you do our Juris Doctor Graduate Diploma in Legal Practice with 80 units of credit, this just outlines the different courses that you'll work through. And those, each course is hyperlinked, so you can click on the hyperlink and look at a sort of detailed explanation of the course. But you'll see that some of the courses are practical courses. So if you look at semester 1, so if you start in the middle of next year, in July next year, by semester 1, 2025, you'll be doing our practice program. So the Legal Practice 1, Legal Practice Part A and B, and Legal Practice 2, Part A and B. But also your supervised work experience, both in your second last year and your last year, also count as courses in the program. So that historically we used to just have them as additional requirements, but we realized that was quite onerous for students to have to study all the courses and do the supervision. So the supervised work experience is treated as one of the courses that you complete as part of the program, or two of them, one in the penultimate year and one in your final year. I just wanted to, if we're running short of time, just stop me at any time, Amith. But I wanted to run through some of the reasons why people might be interested in studying with us. The most important is, I know I'm biased, but I am blown away by the skills and talents of my colleagues. If you come and study with us, you'll be taught by passionate, skilled and knowledgeable professors. And I've got a few slides where I'll give you some examples. We're also a top 200 law school in the Times Higher Education World University Subject Rankings for 2024. And that's something we're very proud of. But it's also important to note that a lot of those rankings are based on research output, and we are very proud of our research, but it's not what sets us apart from other law schools. We are very teaching focused and very clinically teaching focused, so that's doesn't necessarily come out in those rankings. So if you look at other law schools in Australia, they might rank much higher than us and have much more research output than us, but if those rankings were focused on the quality of the clinical training that we provide, in our view, our rankings would be significantly higher.
Okay.
As I mentioned, there's competitive tuition fees and generous scholarships. As a regional city, the cost of living is lower in Newcastle compared particularly to Sydney, but also to places like Melbourne. Amith has visited Newcastle and hopefully can confirm that it is really a beautiful place and
It is, no doubt about it.
remarkable place to
Because Professor Tim, most of the people who have not been to Australia, for them Newcastle is a new city, relatively new city. They haven't heard about Newcastle much, but I can vouch for the city because I've seen the city, I've seen the infrastructure. There are, it's much bigger and much developed city than anybody can think of, and there are multiple law firms, and as Professor said that the students are going on the practical training, and it's not only Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane about Australia. There are many other cities like Newcastle, which is among the best. And then you get the advantage, as Professor said, the low cost of living, good opportunities, and the wage rate is relatively high if we compare with the other big cities. So it's an opportunity for the students, to go study in a world-class university, and yet you're not paying as you would be paying in Sydney or Melbourne. So great, Professor. Yeah.
Thanks, Amith.
Yeah.
I've just got these slides. I don't want to spend too much time on it, but these are just some examples of some of the my colleagues who teach into the program. So Dr. Elena Aidos is originally from Brazil. Her father is a famous academic in Brazil, and she's very much an up-and-coming academic herself. And she's very passionate about environmental law and about the regulation of climate change. So if Amith shares these slides with you, I've hyperlinked the picture of Dr. Aidos to a video she's prepared about one of her courses, which gives you a sense of her energy and enthusiasm and motivation for her teaching. Also, another of my colleagues, Dr. Marie Hadley, actually runs her own YouTube channel about the skills you need to do well as a law student. And I've got a link there to her YouTube channel, so you can watch some of her YouTubes and get a sense of how she approaches teaching.
I'll add that link in my video so that students can also go through this YouTube channel.
Yeah, that would be fantastic, Amith. And finally, my colleague, Dr. Amy Maguire, who is an extraordinary teacher. She's won very prestigious national teaching awards. Like each year in Australia, there's a national teaching award for each group of courses. So every academic in Australia competes for these 7 awards, and there's one award for law and the humanities and the social sciences. And recently, Dr. Maguire won that national award, which is very prestigious. And she also writes extensively in The Conversation, which is a news outlet for academic professors to share their research with the public. And recently, she reached the milestone of 1 million views of her articles in The Conversation. So she's really a powerful communicator, and you can click on that link to read some of her articles and get a sense of the work she does.
Wonderful.
This slide just gives you a sense of the cost of living in Newcastle. So this is based on a company, Budget Direct, that does a cost of living survey, and there's a link there to their website. Groceries in Newcastle are 8% less expensive than Sydney, 6% less expensive than Melbourne. We are a little bit more expensive than the Gold Coast, and so we have to be honest about that. But if you can say you're wanting to rent a one-bedroom apartment in Newcastle, we are way less expensive than Sydney. So 61% less expensive than Sydney, 26% less expensive than the Gold Coast, and 6% less expensive than Melbourne. So it's worth bearing in mind those kind of costs in addition to tuition fees when deciding where you want to go. Now, I used to be able to say that it was quite easy to find accommodation in Newcastle, but unfortunately during COVID, a whole lot of people in Sydney realised that they didn't have to live near where they work, and a whole lot of people in Sydney suddenly realised how much cheaper Newcastle was. So there was a kind of wave of people moving from Sydney to Newcastle during the COVID period. So
especially after working from home. So
because of that working from home development, and also Newcastle is an amazing place to live, and Sydney people sort of started looking around and saying, wow, why am I paying so much to live in Sydney when I can get all this in Newcastle? So it is more challenging to get accommodation than it was before COVID, but we do have a dedicated accommodation support officer. So if you click on that link, if you are going to come and study with us, that person can help you find accommodation. And we also have on-campus accommodation in our university colleges. So there is information linked there that I'll pass on to Amith. That you are also able to do paid work while you study. So during semester time, you can spend up to 48 hours per fortnight doing paid part-time or casual work. And during the non-semester period, you're allowed to work full-time. There's information about this on the Australian government website, and there's a link there you can look to. But if you're already a lawyer in India, and particularly if you're already an experienced lawyer in India, you will find it, certainly at the moment, it's not very difficult for our international students who have legal work experience overseas to get paralegal work in Newcastle while they study. And that can make a big difference to the kind of economic calculation of whether to come or not.
Yeah, that can add to the experience as well, while
absolutely.
working part. Yeah, that helps.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's, Newcastle, obviously you don't just want to work and study while you're here. There's fantastic cafes and restaurants, a lot of live entertainment. The university has a very active kind of social network. There are a lot of sporting clubs, there are a lot of social clubs. Our Newcastle Law Students Association is one of the most active student associations on campus, and there's a link there to their website, and you can also check them out on Facebook. They have a whole lot of social events and dances and balls and so on. So it's a great way of making friends and making connections, which is of course important, looking forward to your career. I've also put some links up here to some international students on YouTube videos just talking about their experience living and studying in Newcastle. This is a photo of one of our many ocean baths, which is one of the things Newcastle's famous for. So it's a really beautiful city as well. So I'd really, I feel
this reminds me, my recent visit. So we were there, on this, the beach shore, and though we didn't, actually bathe there, but it was really wonderful. And to all the audience, Newcastle has, I think, most beautiful beaches in New South Wales. We generally, say the Bondi Beach of Sydney, but I see Newcastle has more cleaner beaches and better, the experience of, and very wonderful, beautiful environment. So clean beaches, and you'll certainly gonna love and enjoy the city, because There's no rush, no chaos. It's a very well organized city, beautiful infrastructure, and going there, living there, and studying in a prestigious university, the law program. I think that's at this tuition fees is an added advantage to the students. Yes, Professor.
Thanks very much, Amit. And yeah, I think one of the big advantages that we have over Sydney is the lack of traffic and hence the lack of pollution. So the air quality in Newcastle is really very good. And also Sydney's not that far away. So if you
Yeah.
drive to Sydney, it's only a 2-hour drive, or if you get a train, it's 2.5 hours on the train. So if you want to enjoy some of the kind of big city experiences, it's not that difficult to, spend a weekend or have a day trip to Sydney to do that.
Absolutely.
I also wanted to briefly mention our Master of Laws program. Now, this is only a 1-year program, but if you already have a law degree in India, it is another option for getting your if you do this approach, it will help you get your qualifications in India recognized by Australian authorities. So you'll see here that our Master of Laws has a number of different specializations. The specialization that may be of particular interest to Indian lawyers is our law in practice specialization. And if you do our law in practice specialization as part of the 1-year LLM, basically it makes it possible for you to cover possibly cover all of the academic requirements to practice as a lawyer in Australia. So it doesn't cover the practical training requirements. It doesn't cover the supervision requirements. But the way it works, if you have a law degree in India and you want to practice law in Australia, you can write a letter to one of the state legal practitioner admission boards. So in New South Wales, that would be the New South Wales Legal Professional Admission Board or the LPAB. And you need to ask them to assess your qualifications from India. I think there's a fee that they charge for that. And then they'll send you a letter which says, okay, we've assessed your qualifications in India. We want you to do this many academic law courses in Australia, and this much practical training courses and this much supervision. So once you have that letter, say, for example, the Legal Professional Admission Board asks you to complete 8 subjects in Australia, 8 Australian law subjects, depending on which subjects they are, because some of our courses, like contracts, for example, we teach over 2 courses, so contracts 1 and contracts 2. But if it's, say, 6 courses that the practitioners board says you have to cover, most likely you'll be able to cover all those 6 courses within our 1-year LLM. And then you can go somewhere else to do your practical legal training and get your supervision. So again, if you're someone who is very confident that you'll be able to rely on your existing networks in Australia to get the supervision, then this may well be a more attractive option, because you get an LLM, you have a visa to be here for a year, you can then do the kind of 3-month intensive practical program. You can go to the law firm that you already have in place, and that will be a kind of good option if you have those networks in place. But the problem is you won't get the post-study work rights. So there's swings and roundabouts always in this. So this slide I've already talked about this, so I won't talk about it too much. But with the Juris Doctor Graduate Diploma of Legal Diploma of Legal Practice, we cover all of the required supervision. But if you do the LLM Law in Practice, there are, pros and cons, I guess. So this slide talks about those pros and cons. So if you do that law in practice, it'll only take you 1 year with us, and potentially in 3 months you can complete a diploma of legal practice full-time with another provider. So it's much quicker and cheaper. Depending on how many courses the Legal Practitioners Board requires, you may be able to cover all of them within the LLM, or you might have to do some additional ones elsewhere, depending on how many they require you to do. Most likely, they won't require you to do more than you'll be able to do in that 1 year. But you'll have to take care of the practical legal training and supervision somewhere else. And you won't have the guarantee that the Juris Doctor Graduate Diploma of Legal Practice provides, and you won't have any post-study work rights. So you'll need to have some other migration.
Professor, what I think is students, especially coming from India, the main focus would be post-study work rights. So they'll probably, majority of them would go for JD and graduate diploma in legal practice, because that gives them the assurance that one, they're getting the complete program, as well as they're getting full year post-study work rights, and that gives them the practical training as well. So this program places students, law graduates, in a more secure situation once they finish their program from the university. So my hunch is that the majority of schools will go for this JD and GDLP.
Yeah, and I think that's probably right. I just thought I should let everyone know about
there might be some students who are very good in the law practice here in India and have good network in Australia. They might look for an option to LLM, but majority I think would go for this program.
Yeah, I suspect you're right.
Yeah.
So that's all for my presentation. Did you have any further questions, Amit?
Yeah, Professor. As you mentioned, because I had queries, so why should students choose University of Newcastle? And you rightly said that the practical training which you provide to the students, which is guaranteed, I really don't find it anywhere else. And the cost at which this program is taught in University of Newcastle is around 35% less as compared to Sydney and Melbourne, because I've seen this program in these cities. So in that sense, it's a very good proposition. And then the most important thing is the passionate staff. Because see, what I believe, and since I came back from Newcastle, I was requesting for your interview, one-to-one conversation, because this program has not been marketed well here in India, not by University of Newcastle, I think by any other university. I don't know. Maybe it's a niche market. Maybe they're thinking that there are not many students would be interested. But I think the advantage is that this is a niche market. Most of the law graduates, when they plan to study in Australia, they go for MBA programs. Although they write SOPs that why this program is important to it, but somewhere in their mind, as well as in the mind of immigration, that's not the perfect combination. So the Juris Doctor and Graduate Diploma in Legal Practice, I think this is the right progression after LLB here in India. And I hope that many audience will watch this video, watch this conversation and the slides, and I hope they come back with more questions. So I'll be ready to answer all those queries, and really hope that in semester 2, which is July intake, we send some good students, good quality students to you. So I really hope that, because I think that this is the right education or study progression for law graduates. And this is also important that more than 50% law graduates in India, they are not doing very well, because here in India the law practice is more of a legacy business, because if the father is a good lawyer, so his son will get good cases. But the independent kind of however, he is a very good lawyer, but then the cases come from the references. So
Yeah.
in that sense, sometimes, majority of time, they get, very depressed that in spite of having good knowledge, good, practice, I'm not getting what I should get. So
Yeah.
those are the people we can target. Those are the people who should come to Australia, study this course with the university, and make their career out of it. I
Yeah.
think this is a very good opportunity, and thank you so much for your
Yeah.
time. I
Yeah.
know
I'm
this is Christmas time in Australia, so everybody is in
yeah.
holiday mood. So
Yeah.
thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. And I do want to say we have and have had some fabulous Indian Juris Doctor students. I teach the corporate law course, which is one of the compulsory courses in the program, and I've just
Mhm.
finished marking all the exams and other assessments. And one of our Indian students topped the course, and she is a fantastic student, but just one of many. So we really are very keen to welcome more students
Yeah,
from.
absolutely, absolutely. So let's hope that this video penetrates to the masses and goes to the right people, right audience, and the interest is generated, and then that can translate into many more students to University of Newcastle.
Yeah, well, I hope
So
so. And thanks so much, Amit. I really appreciate your time as well.
thank you, doctor. Thank you, thank you, and goodbye until we see you soon.
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah.
Yeah, you take
And
care.
whenever you're visiting India, do visit us in Chandigarh. So we'll be
Oh, yeah.
happy to host you.
Yeah,
All
that
right.
would that would be wonderful.
Okay, Professor. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.